Good morning, and I wouldn't say very warm welcome, but a beautiful rainy welcome, because rains are always a sign, auspicious sign, as we know in Indian thought, which sees everything in terms of signs and symbols. So rain is a sign of grace. It purifies us, and it's interesting when we look at the seasons. After the purification by the rain, we have the winter. So winter is a time when the whole earth nature withdraws into itself. It sheds the old. And after winter, we have the spring. So there is the blossoming forth of new life and new creation. But spring is not only about all rosy, beautiful things. Yes, it begins with that, and then comes summer, which is the time of effort. So also with our own life, and rains come. Not now, I'm talking of the outer rain, but rains are a sign. Nature gives us many hints, and rain is a sign of that earth nature needs to be purified, shed its old attire, leaves are shed during autumn, and prepare itself for the new. So we stand today at such a juncture when earth is preparing to shed its old attire and preparing for the new, and that's why we see world over a kind of seeking and anguish, dissatisfaction with all that has been, a struggle to reach out to a new thought, a thought of the future, a new way to understand life. And it's because all our conceptions that we have formed so far, based on both intellectual strivings and spiritual revelations and religious beliefs, seem inadequate. And of course, we can choose to accept it, and that's our own freedom. But if we look deep enough, we'll see that they are inadequate. They don't perfect answer to the riddle of life. And this is where we see Aurobindo brings in a new synthetic thought, which reconciles and gives us an answer, not only an answer, but a hope, a new hope. So this riddle of life can be beautifully summarized in one of Aurobindo's poem, A Tree. So he compares human life to a tree beside the sandy river beach, holding its topmost boughs to heaven, to the skies, holding its topmost boughs to the skies, like fingers to the heaven they cannot reach. This is the soul of man, his body and brain, hungry for earth, his heavenly flight detain. It's a perfect description of our own life. And we can see accordingly, depending on whether we are earthbound and heaven amorous, or we are glued to the earth, or we are taking a flight into the heights, we have different conceptions of life through which man has tried to solve the enigma of himself and the world he inhabits. And I think this is the sign of humanity, that we question, we seek. Of course, there is a whole layer of humanity which is not interested in questioning and seeking, which leads life as it comes, with, as they say, with the flow. So that with the flow is very much like, an animal existence. It feels hungry, it eats. It feels like sleeping, it sleeps. It reproduces, it has children. By instinct, it is driven. But the sign of humanity, being human, is not just a human birth. So in the Vedic rishis, we see that they spoke about human beings as having not one birth, but a double and a triple birth, and many more births. So our first birth is in this physical, material existence, and we want to make sense of it. But if we remain glued to it forever, then we miss the whole essence of being human. What I mean by this is that if we are just happy that my physical life is very good, I am physically healthy, and my vital life of pleasures, enjoyment, is very comfortable, then we miss the real meaning of being human. So human is when we begin to look beyond this initial thing. It's not that this is not required, it's not either or, but having done it, we need to look and try to understand. So the next level or the next birth is when we are born to thought. Of course, we all think, but much of our thought is driven by moment to moment. Oh, it's raining so much. Oh, it's very hot. Oh, the sensex is high. Oh, the sensex is down. Oh, this event took place. That's hardly called thought. That is more like sensations which are triggering some vibrations in the neurons, and it sends up thought messages. But by thought I mean trying to make sense of who we are, why we are, and what is this life. So this going with the flow vis-a-vis this question, we can compare with a man who is driving a taxi, and he knows how to drive the taxi very well. And he's going in the taxi at good speed, full control. He knows all the processes. And you ask him that, well, you seem to be a very efficient taxi driver. He says, yes, thank you so much. I got an award for this and that. And then you ask him, where are you going? Well, that's something which I don't know. I don't care about that. I must know how to drive the taxi well. What are we going to speak to this person? If somebody tells us, a taxi driver, that I don't know where I am going, I don't know the destination if there is any, I don't know the path if it makes meaning, but as and when I see a road, I turn this way or I turn that way and I'm enjoying the driving. Now, I don't know what we would call this, but this is very much similar to a kind of existence which animals lead. They are driven by instinct, spur of the moment. I know there are big philosophies which have been built around this. Live in the moment. But live in the moment is something much more profound than what it appears to be. So this is one kind. The other is who want to understand, is there, why, what is this world, what is this, who am I? There's a very beautiful poem of Aurobindo, A Vision of Science, and I'm sorry, I love poetry and Aurobindo's poetry, so time to time it comes. So this poem is where Aurobindo very prophetically, in 1900, he writes this poem where he says all about science which has learned to drive our chariots by steam and the sky and the electrical currents. All this he has spoken of in that poem. So many prophetic poems of Aurobindo, this is one of them. And religion, petrified, is going into the background. Why? Because science has come, the new God, and it has expugned religion, that you are not needed. I'm enough to take care. So while religion is going out, Aurobindo says there is a third angel which is waiting in the background, and there is a small conversation between religion and science. So religion speaks to science and says, thou thinkest term and end for thee are not. Though thy pride is great, thou hast forgot the Sphinx that waits for thee beside the way. So we know the story of the Sphinx. Sphinx is a mythical creature with the body of a lion or a lioness and the face of a woman and the wings of a bird. And it's an ancient Egyptian Greek mythology where as people cross across the desert of Thebes, the Sphinx asks only one question: who is the creature who walks on 4 in the morning and on 2 in the afternoon and 3 at night? And those who could answer, it says, okay, you can go. And those who could not, it devotes them. This is the Sphinx that waits for thee along the way. All questions thou mayest answer, but one day her question shall await thee that reply. What is her question? For they who cannot die, she slays them, and their mangled bodies lie upon the highways of eternity. Unfortunately, death raises this question constantly upon life, that it's imperfect. This is something we have missed. So what is the question? Therefore, if thou wouldst live, answer first this one thing. Who art thou in this dungeon laboring? See, it's so interesting, just to take a little bit background. Often I'm sure all of us have these discussions and people wonder that, what has made the Indian civilization not only survive, but if you look today, continues to grow. It is itself an enigma with all the challenges of invasions, occupations, dominations, all kinds of things. What really makes it survive and bounce back? It's because we answered some of the fundamental questions which are so important even in our everyday practical life. We often think, oh, these are abstractions. But based on this, our whole way we relate with our own, the life around us and the world around us changes. And that has an impact upon, So for example, to take a little example that at least when, I'm sure many of us when we were growing up, at least in India, so we were taught to when we wake up, touch the earth and do pranam, माता हैं. Everything is sacred. Everything is, of course, the Druids knew it, the ancient Celtic cultures knew it. It was there, the sense of the sacred. So we regarded everything. River is sacred, mountain is sacred. सब कोई देवता है, देवी है. So we grew up with this sense of the divinity immanent in all things. This was the beauty and strength of Sanatana Dharma and continues to be its beauty and strength. It didn't mean that there is no one reality. Of course, there is one reality. It's common sense. It doesn't require very profound abstractions. There cannot be multiple realities for multiple people. But we connected this one reality with its presence in everything. When we forget it, then what happens? Everything is for my enjoyment and pleasure, and God also is for my enjoyment and pleasure. So we create conceptions of God where a God punishes or rewards us based on how we bribe him. And sometimes very easy to bribe him with 5 rupiya 12 ana, buy some prasad for him, or simply just change your name from Alok, I change my name to something else. So suddenly God is very favorable. And such foolish things we still continue to believe in today's time. But I may change my name, it doesn't change my identity, does it? Names are not, identities are not dependent on names. It's not dependent on the place where I am born. It's not dependent on my belief systems. That's the beauty of Indian conception. It went deep beyond all these things. What is that identity which is something which will continue? Is there an identity like that, or it vanishes and then there is a new formation? So in Indian thought, there have been very profound answers because it went beyond the intellectual conceptions of the universe. By intellectual conceptions I mean that when we are in the night below the stars and even let's say the full moonlight, we are debating and discussing whether there is sun or not. So, we have the theist camp of believers who say there is sun. Why? Because our Purvaj has said so. Or X or Y or Z said so. Somebody will give us, oh, see, there is a light coming from the moon. Where is the source? Probably there is a sun. That is a believer. And the non-believer says, very simple, I have not seen the sun. So, both are on the same level, except that perhaps the believer will probably wait for the day and he will know the sun has arisen. So, intellectual conceptions are like that, and they have their utility when we are striving in ignorance, and there are plenty of those conceptions, and I'll not get into that. They form different schools of thought, ideologies, and which each tries to govern the world according to its own belief system. So belief system is not only in religion but also in ideologies. But then beyond it, in Indian thought, we have this idea of a spiritual evolution, that it's possible to see the sun. And the way through which we wait and see the sun is what is called as yoga. So yoga is unique to Indian thought. Mysticism has been there always. But India is preserved, and yoga is not about physical exercises. Physical exercises are only in one system of yoga, which is Hatha Yoga. And even Patanjali takes it up as a very small measure. But yoga is about union with the divine. This is something very unique about Sanatana Dharma, and that's why I say it's not a religion at all, because in a religion you have a doctrine and a belief and a dogma. You believe there is God. Can I see him? No, you cannot see him. Can I become one with him? No, you cannot become one with him. There is a fundamental division between who we are and what that greater reality is. So what we can do with this kind of a, reality, we can probably worship, appease. Maybe he will time to time come and help us. I'm so sorry. Okay. So that life-threatening situation was for me, huh? Okay. So, one moment, I'll just close this. Just give me a moment. Okay. So, we have this kind of a conception where God is there, up out there, and we are humans. Forever there is a gulf between us and God. We may not call God, it doesn't matter. Names, he is not really bothered, I'm sure, whether we call him by this name or that name. But how we conceive, it's not important what name we call him, but it's important how we conceive. So we see there are primitive conceptions of that reality. And according to the primitive conception, God is like an autocratic CEO who punishes us and rewards us, whom we must be afraid of. Just imagine, God fearing. Imagine a person who makes us afraid with a rod and a carrot and makes us worship him by force. And yet, there are people who believe in that conception. But what India has given to the world, this background is important before we come to Sri Aurobindo, because Sri Aurobindo is like the PhD. so India has given the conception that man, thou art God. Deep within us there is the divine element which is present. We can become one with the divine. And it has created not God-fearing people, it has created God-loving people. And truly speaking, even if we say in terms of self-love, to love God is truly speaking in the deepest sense of the word, to love oneself. Because it means to love that which is highest, noblest, most beautifulest, if we can coin an expression, the loveliest, the divinest element. And when we discover that element within us, love that element, we love that element in the whole creation. Because then we are able to see and pick out. And that's how I said that a whole Sanatan Sabhyata was formed, where we discovered God, that reality in everything, worshipped everything with a sense of sacred. So thus far, yoga has taken us, and because of this conception that we can become one with God, we have several lines of spiritual advancement. So India has been in that sense the frontier of human potential research, if you want to use in modern technology. Because we have always tried to understand, know, experience that greater reality which the intellectual conception cannot catch. As I said, Indian intellectual conception is like in the night we are debating whether God exists or not. And there are, several funny stories about it. It's like people reading a book on the sea, and they are claiming to be each who knows the sea. Why? Because you have read more books, you have delivered more talks on the sea. But actually when you come to the sea, it's appalling. I'm sure many of us have experienced. First contact is very nice. You step a few steps inside the sea. But if you try to go further, as the water begins to rise, it's very appalling. It's immensity beyond measure. That's what is the divine reality, all those who have sought him. And therefore, the totality of this divine reality has always escaped us. Because it means we should be willing to take the plunge and go right into its heart, core, what's happening there. So, because of this reason, spiritual evolution itself has taken a very, very long process. So if we really look at it, what's happening on planet Earth from one perspective, the perspective that Sri Aurobindo gives us, we can say that Earth is the laboratory of the divine and the most happening place. So what's happening here? So what's happening here is a very complex evolutionary process through which something more than man is being prepared. So Earth is a laboratory. And in that laboratory, if I may add, India is the laboratory of laboratories. In every laboratory you have the core place where the real research is going on. Like if you go to a nuclear research facility, there will be one place where not all can enter because you need to be well guarded. So India is like that combination of most diverse things for a complex evolution. And I say so very logically because if you look at India, the way it has explored the domains beyond the human mind is amazing. So many paths, so many approaches, so many ways, and sometimes we do a gross injustice by saying sab ek hai. Go to a shop and say, "Arey, ye cheese cake and pineapple cake and this cake, they are all same." He will say, "Please leave the shop and go. You don't value my stuff." So it has explored many, many ways, and in the course it has come up with 2-3 ways of understanding that reality. We may use the word God, divine, doesn't matter, that one source, and vis-a-vis us and the world. Because one of the biggest challenge has been that when people discovered that reality, they found it is so wonderful, blissful, beautiful. There are such poems written on just the beauty of God. Adaram, Maduram, everything is Maduram, Maduram, Madhurashtakam, those of us who have heard. The sweetness of God. And then when you look at this world, sweetness is, even when we find, we are not sure whether it's laced with poison. People are taught, beware of too much of sweetness, because it may cause diabetes. So even human sweetness. So there has been such a contrast that those who went into the beyond tried to figure out what is the relation. Some declared there is no relation actually. And all this is simply kind of illusion which has been created. By whom we don't know, or perhaps God knows. Literally God knows. And the big problem of this illusion theory is that how much ever we may say that it's an illusion, still we can't just live our life that way. Even the Swamijis who go over the world to teach it's an illusion, at the end of the day, they want a heavy fee. Isn't it? So isn't it strange? There is one Vivekananda who is an exception. He didn't come for anything. But plenty who, after saying this world is an illusion, want to increase their own store of illusion. It's a paradox. And to teach about illusion to whom? To illusory beings? Isn't it? Doesn't it raise alarms? Whom are you teaching about illusion when the teacher is an illusion, when the audience is an illusion? Then teaching also is an illusion. If there is only one reality, all is an illusion. Nothing needs to be taught to anyone about anything. Because anyways, it's a shadow thing which is going on. And to awaken to what? Who will be awakened when even the individual soul is an illusion? So there are extreme doctrines like that. For instance, Buddhism, Anatmavad. So this question arises. These were unsolved questions which human mind has sought, at least I have sought with having read all the Western and Eastern thought and the Vedas, the Upanishads, and of course Goethe and Kant, and of course Christianity, Theosophy and Islam. I used to wonder that, what is this talk going on about? It doesn't make sense. Something is missing. And what that missing is, what is the relation of this creation to that which is beyond compare? And if he created this world, then it's a bad job. I mean, honestly speaking, as I was entering, I read that wonderful quote of Swami Vivekananda, which of course is one of his, say courageously whatever you truly believe in. Yes, it's a bad thought if this is the last product. Because this struggling creature with hardly, who knows not what is the next step in front, as in Savitri, Aurobindo says that, man still a child in nature's mighty hands, in the succession of the moment lives. To a changing present is his narrow right. The future flees before him as he moves. His memory stares back at a phantom past. He sees imagined garments, not a face. It's a pitiable condition actually. And I wonder how we can really be satisfied with this degree of, we talk about science, the whole effort of science is to predict, that's how, all science is ultimately about the power of capability of prediction. And we can't predict what's going to happen in my life the next moment. This is the degree of uncertainty in which we live. So when we really look at life that way, we see a gap between the spiritual understanding and where we live. So one way, it's on illusion. It's a non-existent something. There is another way of looking at it. Well, it's not an illusion, but nevertheless, this gap between you and God cannot ever be bridged. And you can supplicate, you can pray, you can worship, but that's it. If he has to help you, he'll help. There are also doctrines which say he cannot help because he's just a witness. Suryo yatha sarva lokasya chakshu nalipyate chakshusha bhayadosha. He's watching this play. Not a very good play. But he's watching. He takes a fancy. And he's watching this play. And of course, there is another extreme kind of doctrine that says there is no God, no reality. That is a big problem. It says everything has sprung up by random chance, accident, somehow, somewhere, any which way. It neither appeals to common sense nor to a basic intelligence. That yes, everything has sprung up just randomly, accidentally, by chance, and it has created out of dust this creature called man who is questioning himself and the world. It's too much of chance and too much of randomness, too much of accident, creating order. So, there is a gap which has remained in our understanding of who we are, what this world is, whatever is our true relation. And that's where we see Sri Aurobindo comes in and fills this gap, which is critical to the way we are going to live. The first thing that he says, which is something very beautiful, and this one thought if we can take in life, that we look at things, people, situations in freeze time. When you take a picture, it's frozen. Many things have happened before it, but more importantly, many things are going to happen after it. And this picture doesn't give me an idea of that. Take, for example, human beings. We say, oh, such and such a person is like this. And we condemn forever. And this such and such a person, who is apparently Jagai and Madhai, we may have heard the story, infamous fame, the story of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, have the potential to change, transform his life. Or Angulimal or Augustine and many others who can completely change. So human beings are constantly changing. So a key word in Sri Aurobindo is evolution. And this idea that progress and evolution is not over with man is something which is central to Sri Aurobindo's teaching. And that central element is that man's evolution is not over. Man is a transitional being, and just as the labor of some force, some energy, whatever we may call it, has brought out man, I won't even use the word creation because it has emerged, like each species emerging, has emerged as man, there is more which is to come. This thought has time to time come to human beings. There are ideas that human evolution is not over. Nietzsche gave this idea. There are others who have given this idea that human evolution is not over. Now, why it changes the perspective? It changes the perspective in the sense now we have a very tangible, valid goal towards which we are moving. I am not a finished product, and that makes sense. That explains this world. That it's like when you go to see how a murti of Durga ji is made. I don't know how many people are aware. There are such beautiful things in Indian thought which we are not aware. One of them is that when a murti of Durga is being made idol, any idea where all we get the mud from? Do they pick up mud from one place and make an idol? We pick the mud from many places, and one of them is from a brothel. Just look at the beauty of this symbolic thought. That the feminine is still there, even in the most fallen, apparently. Still there is in her something of the Devi, the goddess. And through all this mud from different places, now I don't know what they do in commerce, but this is how Durga Ji's idol is supposed to be made. And then you worship her as the eternal feminine. So then the idol is made, and then the next level is to give it a prana pratishtha. And then the rest of the story follows. Now imagine if we were to look at a stage when only some limbs are formed and eyes are the last which are supposed to be made. So what sense we are going to make out of it? We'll see it's something very crude. Remember the story of Michelangelo, who used to every day do this chipping of the stone, and people in the neighborhood were very disturbed. Thank God he was not in Sweden, where even at night if you flush the toilet, it's illegal. So this man in those days, he was chipping and it was creating a sound, and the villagers were very disturbed by this behavior. And one day they went and saw them, they gave up. That's a madman. They got used to this. So, this idea that it's okay, somebody is doing something, and they even started sleeping with it. So one day there was no sound. So now they were disturbed because now this sound which had become music to their ears is missing. So everybody is waiting that when the day comes, we'll see, maybe he is dead. So when they go and see, they see that a beautiful, magnificent rock idol is standing before them, because he had completed the work. So they asked him that, how did you make this beautiful idol out of rock? And he gave a very interesting answer. He said, because I saw it there. So what is that key thing that Sri Aurobindo says? He says, man, however he may seem today, is not the final finished product. There's something going to come greater than man. Who is going to make it? He is not leaving it to chance. He is not saying somehow it will happen. See, logically, even logically, actually, as I keep saying, even before I had read about Sri Aurobindo, even as an agnostic, one thing was very clear before me that, evolution can't stop with man. That's sheer common sense and logic. So, who is going to make it? So, we have this another conception in Indian thought that God is not just governing his kingdom in absentio from above, but he can take a human birth and lead evolution, march of civilization, lok sangraharth, as the Gita says, forward and forward. This idea of a divine descent into humanity, we see so forcefully in the Gita. Yada yada hi dharmasya glani bhavati bharata abhyuthanam dharmasya tadatma shujamaham. So this idea of the divine intervening in our life, not only individually. Individually is okay, I pray and there something happens, miracle or magic. But collectively is one of the most powerful doctrines that have ever been given. This exists in other religions also, at least in Christianity it is there. Even in Buddhism, in a sense, if you look at the Jataka tales. But except that, there it becomes stop. Okay, Buddha is the last, or Christ is the last, or so and so is the last. But in India, there is this idea of a continuous spiritual evolution, both individually and collectively. And this is like the missing thread, the inner life which is continuing beyond one body. So the thread of continuing evolution is rebirth for individual. Rebirth is not about reward and punishment, but about this evolution towards which we are moving. From life to life, we are growing from one class to another, 1 to 2 to 3. So original Vedanta is that. In original Vedanta, there is no retrogression. That's what Swami Vivekananda said with such a power in his message that, well, we don't believe that man is forever condemned or a fallen being, but we believe that man has a divine nature. And through the evolution, he is always moving forward, and eventually this will emerge. It is bound to emerge. Already we see its first signs in the search for idealism. Today's century particularly, because all the past formulas are being broken, human beings are trying to seek, is there something more, better, higher, more perfect? So this idea that there is an evolutionary progression individually has been existing in Vedantic thought. It is there, and that's why it is said that after 84 lakh births, very interesting, maybe, I don't know, somebody has to take account of the species, you eventually become human. But then where it falters is that human is the last. From here, you advance individually from life to life, though the form remains same. Till there comes a time where you finally can project and vanish in that ultimate reality. Here comes the problem, that all this drama to eventually vanish into a reality. So why all this was created? We go back to the original question. Imagine somebody, a child is abandoned from birth, and we have stories like that. Oedipus, Oedipus story, the Sphinx I was just referring to, even Paris in Trojan War. But so you have gone far away, and then one day ultimately you have gone through adventures and you have suffered, struggled, grown strong. At the end, dad says, come back home. So what for? Now your term is over, come back. So the child would question, if all this struggle and challenges that I had to go through had to end this way, that I come back and vanish and finish, then why did you send me at all? And it's not a simple world, it's a delightful world, but it's also a dangerous world, where every joy hides within itself a worm which can any time strike, like a poison fruit. Not that everything is like that, but it is also there. So here comes this new thought that Sri Aurobindo gives, that not only with human form, the journey is still, we can discover the divine. But then after discovery, that is not the end of the journey. We have to manifest the divine. So, he brings a new thought, not Mayavad. Mayavad is this illusion. Then there is Leela. It's God's play, mysterious play. Where does the play end? Well, it doesn't end. It goes on to cycles of Satyug to Kali and then back, and some say it goes back this way, some say directly. Whatever it is a kind of wheel in which we are caught. So here Aurobindo says that, well, his thought is that, well, this evolutionary journey now takes up the other challenge. After discovering the divine presence within, we must also labor to make this form worthy of the inhabitant. Let's take an example. The example can be that supposing somebody has learnt all the music which is available through the ragas and gurus, but he says, no, I want to learn extreme music, ultimate. So he'll probably look for flute of Krishna, or maybe Shiva's Nad. Let's say that he wants to learn the flute of Krishna. So Chhot Narayanji used to say this story, that there was once a person who came from all the way from America to India because he wanted to learn that Krishna's time. Is there a tape of flute of Krishna? Because they were so advanced, they must have recorded something. So he goes to the culture ministry, and culture ministry says, "Arey, why have you come doing all this nonsense? We have proved that 40% Krishna did not exist. You are wasting your time," and so on and so forth. And gifts are exchanged, and then he goes to Vrindavan seeking for flute of Krishna. And you can't find that flute or the record. So what does the mystics do? They go in search of this extreme possibility, whether of music or consciousness, of power, of knowledge, and they discover, let's say, for instance, they hear the flute of Krishna. A yogi hears. After all, this is a valid inner experience. Meera speaks about it, and many others. Now what do? That flute cannot be translated because we can hear it, but we cannot really play that flute. If I try to play it, I'll end up with, at most, becoming Hari Prasad Chaurasiya, not Hari. Hari is different. Hari Prasad Chaurasiya is different. So this is the biggest challenge, that I may discover the divine within me, but then there should be a way, a mechanism that all this discovery I can translate and manifest in everyday life, including the most outward action. This knowledge, this power, this bliss, this love should come in my everyday dealing. Just imagine if people were relating with each other the way divine relates with each other. Through that wisdom, through that power, through that love, that ananda, that peace. How beautiful life would become. So many would say that's not possible. But if that is not possible, then the entire thing collapses. Then the whole journey becomes meaningless if it must stop with man. And Aurobindo says, no, all creation is essentially a manifestation of the divine who is hidden in every element. And in the course of this manifestation, it's building forms and names. As the Isha Upanishad says, Ishavasyam idam sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat. So it is building habitations for the Lord. And human habitation or human body is one such beautiful habitation where the divine can now dwell. Because in human beings there is a possibility of seeking the highest. And then the next level where not only we will be able to seek the highest, there is something unique about human body. Even gods want to take the body according to the Upanishads if they want to evolve further. Because human beings are very strange creatures. Of course, we don't call ourselves strange creatures. But as Aurobindo says, animals are satisfied with a modicum of necessity. Gods are content with their splendor. Sometimes not good to have too much of splendor because there is too much contentment, comfort zones. And animals, roti kapda makan. So animal political ideology will be only roti kapda makan is the need of man. Whereas the godlike political ideology will be we want all the best riches and comforts. Both do not really help us. So he says human beings are the most dissatisfied. And therefore, man is the one creature who is capable of being seized with a splendor. Search for that ultimate splendor. It begins to give us a new meaning or new sense of all our struggles. They are not a punishment. Who knows if they are not a grace? The mother would say, whenever you meet a challenge in life, take it as a grace, and it will be so. Nobody is punishing us because of some sins. If that was the case, Draupadi and Pandav would have been big sinners, and Rama himself. And Duryodhan must have been a very saintly, hallowed man who somehow suffered a fall and became the ambitious, jealous, possessive prince. So we have missed that meaning of God in creation. And Sri Aurobindo says that. So challenge is an individual life which stretches beyond limits. See how it has an impact in the field of psychology. As a psychiatrist, I always, look at it like this. That if you face a challenge, it's a blessing. And if the challenge is extreme, then it's a tremendous grace. But we can make one of the two options. Break down under it, or we reorient ourselves. Anybody who faces these things in life must question, what is this life about? And if we have not raised this question, not sought, then we have missed the opportunity that this challenge had provided. So when we see today humanity going through so many challenges, the mother says that it is because there is this urge within humanity to break through the human barrier and evolve into spiritual beings. That's what Sri Aurobindo said, that with technological advancement, a dangerous situation has been created where all this technology is the disposal of man, which is still largely like an animal. And if he doesn't evolve, then either we have the scenario of rise of the machines, Isaac Asimov, where machines take over. Of course, the first law of robotics is that, machine will not harm human. But, if you have self-thinking machines, or whatever we may say, self-learning machines, machine learning, not self-thinking, but machine learning, that's very much possible. It may say that humans should be wiped out. Or the other option which is before us, and that's a pressing option, is that we evolve from this mental creature, MI, mental intelligence, or human intelligence, HI. Instead of AI is okay, but into DI and SI. DI is divine intelligence and SI is spiritual intelligence. So this is the urgency, and Sri Aurobindo's coming has been at that juncture when humanity is going to face this riddle. That's why we see that so much has happened during last century. It's unimaginable. Fixed ways of life, fixed systems of thought, fixed ideological principles, fixed political scenarios. ब्रिटिश एम्पायर में राज्य कभी डूबता नहीं है. सूर्य डूबता नहीं है. Sun doesn't set in the British Empire. Today we don't know whether British Empire में भी सूर्य रहेगा कि नहीं रहेगा, whether it's going to really rise or it's going to be. See the kind of change. Look at the way the whole scenario geopolitical, it's continuing to happen. So why this is all happening? Because man is being Sagar Manthan, where you are churning of human consciousness, new thoughts, new ways of life are drawing human attention. Some are being given a spin in the reverse way. So all these modern thoughts we see have been answered beautifully. Someone was asking, what's your take on LGBTQ+? So it's an inner truth that the soul has no gender. But when you catch that truth outwardly, then you create a mess. Because this world is not to be created, there is no unity in uniformity, it's unity in diversity. Now imagine if you say all are same. France did it in Charles de Gaulle's time. You know what happened? Algeria and French, I don't want to say which population it was, and they got married. He said, we'll create a new ground race. And today it's burning because you can't create even uniformity of thought, that no, all are same is also a kind of thought which becomes intolerant of any other idea. Look at the mental level, we will try many solutions, but they are going to fail. Let me put it like this. So what is the option? There we see Sri Aurobindo calling us towards a new adventure. The mother called it the greatest of adventure. Spiritual life itself is a great adventure. Those who love adventure, who are not satisfied with just going to the outer Himalayas, but want to climb the inner Himalayas. And then this is the extreme adventure where not only we discover inside, but even the very body, mind, life, speech, feelings, everything should be molded to perfectly express and manifest the perfection that we discover within. There's another on the passage, that saying of Swami Vivekananda, that the divine perfection is within us. And it is this we have to express. That means our life must become a perfect expression of this divine reality within. Right now it is not. And our belief in the divine or even finding the divine doesn't impact this life if we are not able to manifest it. And now comes this possibility of manifesting the divine perfection in terms of our outer life. That's what the mother has used the word like new manifestation. Why it is new? Because up till now we have manifested only human consciousness. Divine has been discovered inside, but manifested in terms of every level. So it's called a new manifestation, new for the earth. And this is Sri Aurobindo's core message, his teaching, if you like to say so, and the path he has shown towards this next evolution through which not only our individual life can be perfected, but also the collective life. Now it doesn't matter whether there are, it's not like this change is going to happen in all the people in the world will wake up one day and say, oh, lo and behold, life has changed. It will happen through few people in different little groups, islets, who will feel the necessity of this new change. And they will strive towards it, and eventually, when there is a sufficient number, the breakthrough takes place. We have beautiful passages in Savitri describing this vision, but one with which we will stop and probably take question answers is, it starts with, thus shall the mass transcendented mount his throne when darkness deepens, strangling the earth's breast, and man's corporeal mind is the only guide, only lamp. As a thieves in the night shall we the covert tread. So that's how he describes God invading silently while we are asleep in the night. And then he goes on to say that, and man, God shall grow up while the wise men talk and sleep. They're debating everything except, can man evolve to something better than? If he cannot evolve, whatever we may try, whatever system we may put in place, it is going to collapse, because the critical factor is man, not a system. You have the most liberal system apparently, but it will collapse because human beings are the same. They will find a way. It's like, typical, I'm sorry, but like lawyers. They will find a loophole in the law. You may make any amount of laws and bylaws and clauses, you'll find a way, figure out. So God shall grow up while the wise men talk and sleep. For man shall not know the coming till its hour, and belief shall be not till the work is done. So there, Sri Aurobindo has not only given this vision, he has assured us, as the mother said, he is the promise of the future. He is the future, marching towards its own realizations. He brings hope that, well, why there is hope? Because man's evolution is not over. And that's so logical. Because if we remain what we are, to say that there is hope by manipulating systems, knowing very well that we are driven by greed, desire, ego, and everything else, ambition. So this is going to end up in a mess. Already it is. But if human beings can evolve into God-like humanity, or still further a divine superhumanity of the future, then there is a possibility. And it is this that Sri Aurobindo declared, announced, and gave us a way to move towards that. Now, who will move, who will accept that invitation is left up to the divine. There is no, in this yoga, nobody converts anyone. And it is like a call which must arise from within. Obviously, there is a whole group of humanity which is satisfied with the way it is. It's okay. As I said, there are different layers. And there is a group of humanity which is happy with its own intellectual conceptions. I have seen people, strangely, they're very happy that there is a God who punishes us, whom we must be afraid. And I said, don't you find it silly? No, that's how God is, because हमारे किताब में लिखा है, तो भाई ठीक है. You can't argue with dogmatism, and you should not. It's okay. You're happy in your belief system. और क्या क्या लिखा है किताब में जो illogical है, but ठीक है. That's how we can, I don't know if there is any creature more who can revel in absurdity than human. As Einstein once remarked, there are only two things infinite in the world. One is the universe, and the other is human stupidity. And then he says, of the former I am not sure. human stupidity to believe in that kind of doctrines and live by it. Well, each to his own way of life. But this idea of spiritual evolution, of something more than man, if that excites us, if that draws us, not because we will become Superman, no, not at all, but because it brings hope amidst the darkness. It gives us a direction and a purpose. It makes sense of our struggles and difficulties and challenges individually. Every time I face a challenge, I know that, well, nobody is punishing me for anything that I may have done in, God knows, 5 lives back or whenever. But it is a grace, it is a challenge given to me to evolve through it, not just past it. All species have evolved through these challenges. Then life, it makes sense, it makes exciting, it becomes exciting, and life becomes, our own life becomes the most happening thing, because we become the grand laboratory of God. So I'll stop here and and take up questions, as many as we wish to, of any kind. So, my background is that I am from the Indian Air Force, was taken premature retirement, and I am a psychiatrist by profession. But what drew me towards Aurobindo is this seeking, this dissatisfaction with all that. And presently I am with the Aurobindo Ashram, Pondicherry, for the last 21 years, living there permanently. Otherwise, have been in connection for a long time. So, but questions can be anything on any kind. Yes, please.
Well, as you have described your progress, mankind has to progress. So you have to have an environment how to progress. And the preconceived idea that we have currently, it doesn't allow us to progress.
Yes, absolutely. That's absolutely true. I'll just rephrase the question that man is meant for progress. Very true. That it is what characterizes us. Unlike the animal which is satisfied, unlike the gods who are satisfied. So we are born to progress. But initially this progress takes the form of outer material progress. As we evolve, there is the idea of intellectual progress. And if we evolve still further, there is the idea of spiritual progress, and so on and so forth. So the question is, what is the role of environment? Let me put it this way. Actually, we can look at it both ways. So environment, even the most extreme environment, can become a big feeder. As I said, the greater the challenge, the greater the possibility. And I take just one example out of many. So we know that how the transition took place from the river of water living creatures to the creature which we know as the tadpole, half land and half Kurma avatar, out of Matsya avatar. Let's put it, our whole parable of Dash avatar is an evolutionary tale. So how the transition took place? Because suddenly popped a mudfish and was thrown into the mud. Somewhere was flying fishes. So the first flying fishes were these restless creatures who jumped out of little and water bodies and entered into the mud. And in the mud they were trying to breathe with little water. They were literally getting stifled. If you see the way mud fishes, it's very sad, it's painful. They are struggling to breathe. Why? Because they know how to breathe in water, they don't know how to breathe in land. But they are in a little like cesspool where there is water but very little. So they are trying to struggle. But these are the ones which evolved into the tadpole. Let me narrate another example, purely biological examples, not theoretical. So how did human evolution take place? In Ramayana, of course, we have the story of Sugriva and Vali, which is very interesting about evolution from the Vanar type of humanity. They are not Bandar, but they are Vanara, which is one of the early stages, animal man evolving into human by Sandhi with Ram. One does the Sandhi, one says my might is right. So that's a whole story, but let me put it in scientific perspective. So how did this chimps evolve into humans? So it was not the best chimp. So what happened is that in the African, as the understanding goes, I won't say story because it's how science understand today. So there was increasing shortage of food supply and things which they used to live upon. And though they didn't have a meeting, but we can imagine that they had a meeting. Ki kya karna hai? What are we going to do about it? So the stronger monkey, ape, I am forgetting the name, but the stronger ape took this that no, we'll stay here, we'll figure out. And the other type said, we take the challenge of moving out. It didn't say anything, but it was driven by that urge. That चलते हैं कुछ खोजते हैं कहीं कुछ होगा. They didn't say this to each other, but I'm sure some kind of communication probably took place. So this ape that moved out evolved into humans. This is the actual story. It can be checked. Whereas the apes that did not buzz out, they were stronger, but they continue to remain apes. So when we are faced with extreme difficulty, see what is difficulty? It challenges to find extreme ways. So similarly with thought, that no, God punishes us, God is like this, or there is no God. These are very childish notions and it challenges our mind. So then we come out with new ways of thought, new ways of understanding life. So ultimately, to make the whole story short, it depends on how we look at situation and circumstances. There is a small little story of Meera when time came for a marriage. So Meera was not sure what I should do. So she went and asked one of the aunts. She says, मेरी तो श्याम से रंग लगन लग गई है. हो चुका है मेरा marriage with श्याम. मैं तो सांवरे के रंग राजी. But they want me to marry. What should I do? So aunt says, doesn't matter. You should marry. She said, why do you say? She says, in my own experience, I have a husband who is so good. Morning he gives me breakfast. Then he prepares lunch. He looks after everything. And therefore I have so much time to dedicate to Hari. So she says, oh, that's good. That makes life even more easy. But then Meera says, कुछ गड़बड़ है, ऐसा मॉडल बनता नहीं है. ये तो ऐसे ही है, कुछ शादी करने के लिए such men are rare. So she goes and asks another aunt. She says, you should marry because see, I got married, my husband doesn't look after me. He's so careless. But because of this, I can't be attached to him. And therefore, I can easily turn my thoughts to God. So then Meera realizes that ultimately it's the attitude with which we take the challenges of life. So I suppose as a Vibhishan, as it's described in Ramcharitmanas, so Hanuman asks him, how are you living in this place? He says, as a tongue dwells between 32 teeth. That's how I'm living. But because I have no choice, so all the time Ram Ram ki ratna. Because Vibhishan has no choice. He doesn't even have a vegetarian restaurant in Lanka. तो क्या करेगा बेचारा? तो राम 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 राम. So उल्टा नाम जपा जग जाना. That of course to Valmiki bhai Brahma samana. So it is not the outer situation, but the attitude with which we face it. So one can be anywhere, as one of the places Mother says, one of Sri Aurobindo's message, that we don't have to leave this world to find God. We don't have to enter into limited beliefs to find God. He is everywhere and in everything. And if we do not discover it, it's because we have not cared to discover Him. Now this is the problem with belief systems. What you said is preconceived ideas. God is only there in a particular temple or mosque or wherever, I don't know whether he lives in any of them. I remember a joke of when the churches were being made for the blacks to go and pray elsewhere. I'm sure people know this part of history. So one of the black men who had worked for long in a particular church, he was very disheartened. 5 years he had worked and he was feeling that from tomorrow I'm supposed to go to another church and pray. And it seems Christ appeared before him. Bacha, kya ho gaya? Why you are so disheartened? He says, last so many years I have worked in this church and they are driving me out today. So he says, don't worry. They have driven me out 5 years back. We are in good company. So you see, This idea in today's time, we have to come out of that, God is found only in, I don't want to name Mecca or Vatican or XYZ in Banaras or any place. He is everywhere. This is the fundamental teaching of spiritual life. And why can't he be here at this very moment, at this point? It's just that we don't know how to connect with him. If it is true that he is everywhere in everything, then it's a question of how Prahlad led his life. So that is the paradox. I often say that in schools we are teaching the gospel of Hiranyakashipu. You manage this, manage that, manage this, manage that, all the outer conditions, so one day you may not die. Isn't it? Yet Kim Ascharyam strikes us, men die. The other is like Prahlad. Hari, 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 and finally Hiranyakashipu asks him, is he there in this most material block of stone, the pillar? And he says, yes, he's there, my Hari is there. And he breaks it and Hari appears taking his own form. So this has been the great teaching of all the wise ones, that any condition, and Sri Aurobindo in the mother's own life. Sri Aurobindo's life, just imagine what is the time when he has taken literally a spiritual leap, if you may use the word, is in the Alipur jail, when the sword is hanging over him. So whenever anyone feels distressed about life, I often say this. People say, count your blessings, look at how compared to others you are. I suggest read Sri Aurobindo's Tales of Prison Life. Tales of Prison Life. Look at, how in that jail Sri Aurobindo found God, and later on he says in one of his aphorisms that I went to a place full of holy men and I got bored. Then God took me to a prison and that became my trysting ground with divine, with God. So Sri Aurobindo's own life is a perfect example of how every situation is nothing else but God trying to snatch away all supports. See, either we give up by ourselves or he will snatch away. When he starts snatching away, till there is only one support, and that is the divine. So we have this story of Draupadi and gopis. So gopis have to ultimately, they learn to abandon themselves completely. He snatches the robe of sin, he snatches the robe of virtue. Then they belong utterly to Krishna. But Draupadi, because she is Yagyaseni, you can't touch her, she is flame, fire. So ultimately all the support, she used to be very, I have 5 husbands, nobody can touch me, how dare. Then there is Bhishma, Drona, all of them are helpless. And then during that time, Shri Krishna appears in a moment of apocalypse, and we know that story that she asked Krishna, why did you take so long in coming? She says, because you were calling me as if I am very far. Vaikuntha Nivasi, etc., etc. But the moment you said, Hridaya Kamal Nivasi, he who dwells in the lotus of my heart, I appeared immediately. So how we conceive of God, how we connect with him, that matters. So when the situation is completely dense, there is a way of looking at life. One of the Urdu poets has said very beautifully, Sab nakhat, I'll translate in English, Sab nakhat ama ke doob gaye, sara akash tumhara hai. So he's invoking the sun. He's saying all the stars have set. It's dense night. So he says, sun, you come. Now the whole field is clear for you to come. So, if we hold the props one day or the other, when the time comes, the wake-up call, they begin to be snatched away. And if we don't respond to the wake-up call, then there is the shake-up call. And if we still don't respond, then God alone take care. So it is much better that time rehte sukh mein sumiran jo kare to dukh kahe ka hoye. So when life is still comfortable, we should seek this greater journey, this deeper truth. So situations can be seen both ways. My personal experience of life and humanity is that very comfortable situations are often not a blessing at all. It's a sign, probably, Prapatti ji used to say, maybe God has not yet looked at you. Whereas when situations are difficult, then the evolutionary challenge is there. But if we can learn to look at the existence straight in the face, at the same time know that Krishna is with me, then Kurukshetra becomes the way towards the Gita, fulfillment of the Gita. So situation can be seen both ways. Attitudes must be cultivated. Yes, please. Yes.
I have two questions.
Yes, please.
Let me start with the first one. What's your experience that is there God exists or it's a concept?
Okay, that's wonderful. So,
Second question.
yeah.
So you were saying that we should evolve to divine. What's the property of divine?
Okay. What was the first statement you said? What of the divine?
What is the property of divine?
Okay, that's fine. Quality on. So first I'll take up the first question. And since you asked from my experience, so I'll talk about that because I can give you empirical evidence that God exists. The fact that people who searched, they found. Or they had a glimpse. So that itself is enough empirically. Yeah, after this we'll take up. Oh, I'll repeat the question. Good, thank you. So first question is that from my experience, what is my experience whether God exists? So I can answer this question impersonally and personally. Impersonally is that all who have sought, ask any mystic. And this world, if there is always behind the surface outer life, there was always a stream of spiritual life running like an undercurrent in all civilizations, whether we take the Mayan civilization in the American context or the Vedic civilization, the Chaldean civilization, always. And all mystics found something or the other which they called as God. Now that's different story, but they discovered something which is beyond the human conceptions and understanding. So to that extent we can say that empirically there is enough evidence based on those who searched. Now there are people who don't search and they think about it. So now obviously that doesn't have much of meaning in the sense that one day I was watching one of the interviews, Sachin Tendulkar on religion, or Shah Rukh Khan on religion. I said they are not qualified, they have not really studied the subject. They're good people. He is god of cricket, and the other may be regarded as Ravan of the Indian cinema. But no, I don't mean pun intended. But well, I just saw him in the dream last night, so it was so topmost. Well, the point is that they have not really made a search. It's like a scientist who has really not made a search, or like a neurologist and someone who is not even entered into MBBS school, and he said, you know what, neurons work like that. And say, look here, study, it's a whole science and I've spent a whole lifetime understanding it. So that's one impersonal evidence, that if we take the word of those who really searched, they found something or the other. It was not necessarily exactly the same thing, but they found. Now the second part is where we come into play. Now one could be satisfied with this as a belief system. That's where the problem lies. Religions are formed. But in India it has been yoga, not religion the way we understand. So we say that you make a search. So my quest was again this. One was that the personal aspect now I'm coming to. I was not satisfied with all the conceptions of God, frankly speaking. So I became an agnostic. I said, it's much better to be a good human being, a good doctor. Though it didn't make sense. If there is no greater reality, simply that I'll become a good doctor, maybe a good human being, doesn't make sense because I need to understand, is there a meaning and purpose? So this used to be behind, but I became an agnostic. And well, I would literally say, put it figuratively, that God walked into my life. I mean, if I had to put it in a metaphorical way, literally in the midst of all the hustle bustle of Connaught Place, where something literally pulled me into a shop where I saw this book, The Synthesis of Yoga, Aurobindo, and that name did some tingling inside me. Literally it was kuch kuch hota hai. I've never experienced this kuch kuch hota hai. Literally by seeing Aurobindo, I said kuch kuch hota hai. Why I don't know till date. I mean now I can say why that name created in me that jhanjhanat. What is this name? I can't explain it. I had never heard Aurobindo's name. Not even as a revolutionary or freedom fighter or anything. Because agnostic, sub-spiritual people are all about Maya, which I don't want. humanity anyways appeared strange. So I was on a crossroad. And that book I found the answers, all my questions, and that now from that the journey that has begun at that point of time is much more than amply rewarding. So if you ask my experience, yes, he exists. I can only share with you one because these experiences are very intimate. But this one is very objective and very scientific. So I was, this is in 80, let me remember, 84 perhaps, or 85, doesn't matter. 84 or 85. I was 23, 24 or 25. 84, I was 24, 24, 25, 25 years of age. So, agnostic, who had come across Sri Aurobindo's Synthesis of Yoga at that point of time. And it was kept, I was just beginning to read a little bit and feeling happy about it. And then I was walking on the road along with my wife. And we were going to watch a movie called New Delhi Times. I don't know whether we remember that film or not. A very nicely made film. It's a political satire. As I was walking on the road in Patiala, busy road with buses and all going, I was inside in a different state than my wife. She was about picture देखना है and वहीं पर dinner करेंगे क्या करेंगे. And I was in that state कि if there is God, why doesn't He reveal Himself? This was exactly my question. And suddenly within a moment, I experienced such a solid peace. The only word I could think of is peace because everything was thrown miles away. The truck which was going seemed like sounding from miles. Now I can describe all this experience, give name to it. And all that I was drowned in that sea of peace or whatever. I don't know why I called it peace, but it's the closest term that I can give. That's something which completely engulfed me. But that's okay. I asked for it and something came. But what was interesting, that's where the objective scientific element comes. That my wife experienced it, but she didn't know because she had not asked anything and she entered into a strange inner state. So in that state, whether you call it divinely zombie or whatever, we walked into the Air Force mess. That's where New Delhi Times was being, screened. And quite interesting, यार आधे घंटे बाद we first broke the ice. Picture देखना है? नहीं. अजीब हो रहा है. So we came out, sat. We are not even able to communicate to each other. A lot of mosquitoes swarming around, but nothing is affecting us. Now I was aware कि कुछ हो रहा है अंदर, कुछ होता है, but she doesn't know what's happening. So, but I could not even speak, debate, discuss, communicate. So I said, I think we should just rest. We didn't have dinner. Nothing held our attention. So we went. We slept. We woke up, still there. By 10 o'clock, so I'm talking very objectively, that began to fade into the background. Then we exchanged notes. कि क्या हुआ था, क्यों हुआ? Then I shared that this is how I experienced it. Now I have myself plenty and plenty of those experiences. I'm sure many of them have. And these experiences for any one of us, I'm sure, could be literally brought into a whole book. So many experiences, including one of them was so fantastic. All of them are there on the YouTube, so I don't want to sound repetitive. Where literally a human being is expressing, and all these are not like, I as a psychiatrist, I know what is hallucination. And one of the early experiences I wondered, because, okay, this one I'll share, and then that there are things which are beyond our reckoning. So in Pondicherry, first visit, so I had gone down to sit at the ocean. I used to love, contemplating, looking at things in my own thought world. And again, 25, that's when I went to Pondicherry, or 26. So I was, this experience came before visiting Pondicherry. And I was not even interested. For me, it was not like, Sri Aurobindo ashram bhi koi jagah hai, who is the mother, no idea. But somehow, finally I landed up, that's a different story. So I was sitting there and suddenly I had this vivid image, somebody would say hallucination, that myself and my wife are lying in mother's lap. So I said, what is this? It shouldn't come. What is happening to me? Am I losing hold of the senses? And then I got up and started coming up. So it was over rocks, then there were rocks, and suddenly midway I slipped. I must be lost in that reverie, and I slipped and fell on the rocks. Trust me, it was like those strobe effect falls where I literally carried fool ki tarah. Somebody has placed me on the rocks, and I was feeling a deep ananda inside. Now the only word I can use is ananda. So I was experiencing this, and I was like, gira hu, rock, kuch impact I don't, there is not a single, forget the scratch, even the impact that it's on rocks. And then Dr. Maheshwari, who was with me, suddenly saw Mundi coming up and then fall, disappearing. Mundi is like my head. And I said, Alok. And then I got up and said, Maheshwari ji, everything is fine. And then I came up and narrated this whole thing. So the story didn't end there. That time, Chandradeep ji, one of the old sadhaks of ashram, many of them had this intuitive vision even now. So he was coming and he said, why don't you tell him? So I told him. He said, why don't you ask your wife what she was experiencing at this point of time on that particular day? I said, my scientific mind came to the forefront. So I rang up and asked her, ki kya hua? Did you experience something? He says, yeah, that day, I felt I am going to die. It was such a splitting. And she is the last person on earth to be afraid. Mane typical Punjabi ki like, kisi dar nahi lagta hai. So she said, first time in my life I ever experienced something like a fear, and perhaps the last time, as if she is going to die. So I said, and suddenly at that point of time it all vanished. So I asked her, what were you wearing? And she told exactly the same color, same sari which I saw. Now, of course, we can say all this is chance and coincidence. But when so many chances and coincidences multiply, then you wonder, ki bhaiya, ye chance wali theory is by chance. This doesn't explain anything. So this is about my personal life, that whether there is God or not, ever abundant. And I'm sure this, I'm narrating this because you asked me, I'm sure anybody who has sought would, of course, testify to it. The second question is qualities. I would not properties, I would say quality. Though they are described typically in the scriptures. So how did the search for God begin? It began behind this ever-changing world is there a stable ground. Now this is logical. It's like somebody is dancing in mid-air. You will say, yaar, ye cinema effect hai. Kuch to hai, paon ke niche. Isn't it? There has to be ground on which we. So people are in search of the spiritual seekers. We'll understand the dance later. Let us discover whether there is a stable ground, which is unmoving, unchanging. So if you read the Isha Upanishad, it describes beautifully the qualities. One of them is Isha Vasyamidam Sarvam Yat Kincha Jagatyam Jagat. Behind all this that is moving individually and universally, there is the Isha who is hidden, the Lord who is hidden behind appearances. Then it says very interestingly, one unmoving who moves ever in front. Paradox. So what is there which is unmoving, which can move ever in front? Is there is such a ground which is simultaneously everywhere. So I am here. Imagine there is a road on which I have to move. So this road is not moving. And yet when I move on the road, I will see it is ever moving in front. It is taking me to some destination. And imagine if this is an endless road in spaceless, timeless existence. So these were the original mysteries, how space and time came into existence, on which I must say that we all belong proudly to that inheritance, which however we may disown, that they raise these fundamental questions germane to understanding our own existence. So what did they discover? They discovered that yes, there is a stable ground. So first thing when we describe that God, whatever we encounter is that stable ground. Why it is stable? Because it is unmoving and yet it is everywhere. It is not subject to disintegration. So the word uses Achyutam Akshitam. That's how Shri Krishna received this mantra from Ghor Rishi. Achyutam, that which never suffers a fall, never suffers a disintegration. So Achyutam Akshitam, that which cannot be depleted. So this how it was described. Then second aspect, how do we say that there are any qualities like that? There are several qualities. People have described him as Ananta Guna, infinite. Now there is a very simple commonsensical answer to this. If I were to ask all over the world, hold a survey, all kinds of surveys they hold, happiness index and money index, but supposing a survey, what do we want. We means each individual if we ask. And if we say happiness or sorrow, answer will be obvious. Love or hate, answer will be obvious. Peace or trouble, agitation, answer will be obvious. Knowledge or ignorance, answer will be obvious. Death or immortality, answer will be obvious. Now, where is this seeking and obvious answer coming from intuitively? If there is no such thing. So that's where we can say there is an indirect evidence that we are programmed, because that is hidden within us. We begin to seek this. So, kasturi ka mrig jo fir dhoonde ghas. It is smelling it, kasturi, that musk deer. It's smelling that smell from inside, and he is searching in the grass. So our life is like that we are looking for these perfections. So he is described as divine perfection. Now, if there was no such divine perfection as logical, rational human beings, we should not actually even be remotely expecting anything from anyone in this world. But the most avowed atheist still wants his wife or her husband or her child or XYZ to be Mr. Miss Perfect. And it's a very difficult spot to be in. Nobody can be in this spot. But why we are seeking that this world should be perfect? If we believe there is no divinity, why should it be perfect at all? It should be destroyed. It will be destroyed. Now imagine telling people, why are you worried about the world? Let it be destroyed. Hey, you're not bothered? Why should I be bothered if there is it's all chance, random accident. It's better that it is destroyed, because at least we'll be freed from this mental harassment and suffering. So what will people say? Regardless of our belief and non-beliefs, don't talk like a stupid person. Why? Because deep within us, there is this seeking for perfection. This seeking is indirectly an evidence, indirectly of course, that there is somewhere something which corresponds to what I am seeking. And strangely, this is also the cause of our suffering. We want Miss to be perfect and Mr. to be perfect. When we don't find, we want life to be perfect. When we don't find, we are unhappy, isn't it? But that's where the spiritual thing comes in. You can discover it inside you. And then your life, at least inwardly, individually, will reach that perfection. Then you can express it, which is what Aurobindo speaks of. So all the things that we seek in life, raise it to its nth level. I seek happiness, so God is perfect bliss quality. What is meant by perfect bliss? It doesn't change with changing situations. If it is summer, the bliss doesn't say, oh my God, I am sweaty. Or if there is a deluge, it doesn't say, oh my God, my bliss is gone. Because it is the ultimate of raise, change, and it's a qualitative difference. Change pleasure into happiness, happiness into felicity, felicity into joy, and take it to the ultimate origin, bliss. Same with knowledge. Our knowledge is always at best a reasoned guess. We all know that. So, yet we are striving for knowledge. So that perfect knowledge which is all-knowing, omniscient. Similarly, we seek for power, the perfect absolute power, one power which is there in everything and everywhere. And love, that perfect love. So we can say the divine is the perfection of all that we seek ignorantly. And we are seeking because it exists somewhere. Like people were searching for India. Who was that fellow who was searching for India and came to America? Columbus. So that's why they called Red Indians. But then his seeking was there. Poor fellow died. He didn't know this is not India. So now Indians have found America. Tumhari seeking to fulfill hogi. So this perfection that we are seeking in every sphere, in the divine, they're all harmoniously there. But to these individual aspects, we give the name of Godheads. Anandamaya Krishna. Then we have the Vishwa Chetna Swarup Vishnu. Or we have Shakti Swarup Shiv. Or we have Sat Swarup Brahma, who brings out the existences. So Indian thought has given names to each of these aspects. But in the divine, they all meet and harmonize together. So that is the qualities. They are described in Isha Upanishad also. Now, obviously, in the beginning, one doesn't find all of them. It's like when I go to meet somebody, let's say the president. So, like, Modi ji's that story, that in 20s or something, he had come, or 30s probably, I don't remember. He came and stood outside White House. There is a picture also. Okay. So, अरे White House. मुझे जब ले गए थे मेरे फ्रेंड्स, तो मैं तो सो गया था कार में, तो वो मुझे बता रहा था, बट I had sleep. He said, "Are you were sleeping, Alok?" I said, "Doesn't matter." He said, "I'll take you again." I said, No, it doesn't interest me. Another White House interests me." So the point is, we start coming in contact with that reality, and I may say, this is White House. So there have been people who have had a glimpse of that divine reality from afar. That this is White House. So somebody who has walked inside says, नहीं, अंदर आओ, फिर देखो क्या नज़ारा है. So somebody goes inside. And he goes into the lawn and he serves sharbat. I don't know what is given or not given, or through a security check, purification process. And then, you say, White House. नहीं, ये White House नहीं है, ये entrance है. फिर अंदर जाता है, somebody ushers you inside. Okay, you are a guest, special guest. So you are taken, you are meeting the ministers. So if you don't know, I'm putting it as an allegory. So you say, oh, आप ही हैं president? नहीं, हम तो परिचारक हैं, सेवक हैं. President is yet to come. So similarly, in our quest for God, we have come in contact with that tremendous, stupendous, infinite, eternal reality, level by level. And based on that, human beings have created conceptions. So in these conceptions of God, based on the partial glimpse, but hardly anyone has seen him in his totality. That, because if you see it, you can't bear it. That's how it is described. Sri Ramakrishna says, haha kore gire pade. If you see it, you can't come back. Well, to the credit of Sri Aurobindo, if I may use that word, he came back. So the Gita speaks of samagra mam, to know him in all his parts and principles. And one test that the Gita gives is very interesting, that you want to see God in the world. So Arjun says that you are speaking things, Keshav, they are beyond my comprehension. थोड़ा कुछ, we kunji hai kuch. Tell me something which is tangible. How do I behold you? Then he says, there is a very interesting chapter called Vibhuti Yoga. Anything where you see in preeminence and abundance, know it to be my manifestation. So he says, पौरुष में मैं राम हूँ, नागों में मैं वासुकी हूँ, पर्वतों में मैं यह हूँ. So he gives anything which is preeminent. That's why man has a tendency to worship the extraordinary, the man of genius, or even mountain which is stupendous. Why? Because somewhere we intuitively feel this is something extraordinary, and it's a manifestation of the divine presence. So all these qualities, if we were to add, we'll probably mountain, height beyond measure, towering to the skies, sea and sky vastness. So we could literally make a whole list of qualities. And at the end we would say, like Kabir said, Hindi I'll say first, सात समंद की मसी करो, लेखनी सब बन रही, धरती तो कागज करो, हरि गुण लिखा न जाए. That if you make ink out of the 7 oceans and pen out of all the trees, don't cut trees, this is not literal, it's only a figurative thing. Anyways, people cut trees to build furnitures and then they lecture on environment. It is better to cut a tree and write something about God. But anyways, trees should not, they are nice creatures. So, well, if we were to cut all the trees and make pen out of it, and the entire earth as a slate, as a paper, still we will not be able to exhaust all the qualities of that one name which is Hari. So in the end they ended up saying Om. All that is waking is He. Om has those 4 aspects, no? And the outward Jagrat. All this that we see in the world, outer world, is He. All that is there in the inner worlds, Hiranyagarbha. So this is the Virat and the Hiran. Thought, feelings everywhere, constantly undergoing a churning. That is He. All that is yet to manifest, Pragya, of which we are not aware, is He. And all that is beyond all these 3, Turiya, is He. So this is how they ended up describing, because they found that it is inexhaustible, Akshitam. So that's how the qualities. But yes, people oversimplify, God is love, and then they land up in a mess because they don't know that God love can slay with compassion. Krishna's love slays Kans and Duryodhan. Why? Because One, he was freeing these souls which were in dark bodies, and he was freeing the earth out of his love. Mahabharata was an act of love, because he knew that if there is no Mahabharata, earth will be overrun with the thunder and fire of death and the asura. So we don't understand that love. We think that love is like the lovey-dovey love. Oh, so nice. Well, that is also an expression. But that love can express itself as kalosmi bhava. So most of the time we pick up one quality. Or anandos hum, anando hum. It doesn't matter. These are initial glimpses. But ultimately, he who sees all existence as the one self, he alone knows. That's how the Ishopnisha describes. Sarva bhuteshu chatmanam tatona vijigupsapte. Atme vabhut vijanata, who sees all existence as the one self. And that incidentally, if at all there has to be unity in the world, it has to be on this basis. It cannot be on the surface. It is only by discovering the divine self in all creatures that we can have a unity which is not uniformity, which will not disrupt the multiplicity and diversity of the world. It will be a unity in diversity. No other way. Even an ideology where we try to say create unity by certain laws, rules, regulation, then again there are people who are different. How are we going to create unity that way? So it has to be from the depth and then translating in outward shapes. And so, yeah. Yeah, please. Yeah. No, you don't need to stand, yeah.
How can we connect to divine?
Ah.
Like there are different ways, right? If, people say meditate, chanting.
Yeah. So you see how to connect with the divine. Well, there are ways, methods, processes. Leave them aside for a moment. If the seeking is sincere, he'll connect with us. That is the most important thing to be remembered. That is called aspiration. So going back to my own experience and many others, he pulled me into a shop. I was walking on a road in Patiala, going to watch a movie. But this seeking, so more important than the method is why you are seeking the divine. If the seeking is for frivolous things that mere ghar mein dhan dhanya se bhara rahe, to divine will say, he doesn't really need to meet me, I'll send Annapurna goddess, will take care of. Or if you want the divine to get some power, so he'll say, ye to asur ke raste mein ja raha hai. So if we say that I want to seek the divine because all my miseries are going to end, then we'll see that we'll feel a supporting hand somewhere or the other. But if we want to seek the divine, truly because we want to seek, what is that? Who is that? Then we will see there is a response, an answer to this quest. So, more important than process. People may sit in meditation for years. They may learn one sikhaya hua tarika, sit bolt right, 90 degrees. That doesn't bring contact with the divine reality. Ravan did it. We know what happened. But it is that genuine seeking inside. So if the seeking is genuine, that is something we will know inside, or the divine would know, then the contact will take place. But if the seeking is not there, then what to do? That's where the role of things like this, what we are having today, these are not just, this is not a talk or a lecture, and I'm glad you didn't introduce it. It's a satsang, but I take it one step forward, it's a yagya. So we all come here and somebody has given his time, somebody has given energy, somebody has given something, and someone else brings something else, and together we have the yagya, and then the prasad we all take. So that is the importance of satsang and yagya in the true sense, that when we seek the company of those, and the company of those may be difficult to find, but the books are there. Aurobindo, fortunately, Aurobindo and the mother have left a plethora of literature, and if for nothing else, just for that, we can say that Bhagwan hi kar sakta hai. Nowhere, no, everybody has given some scripture. Okay, but where do you find 36 volumes of what kind of writing touching upon every possible problem of existence, everyday life, and then add to it 18 volumes of the mother plus 13 volumes, you take the agenda. I mean, it's just amazing that how they have poured their love through pages. And if nothing else, we come in, I'm taking to this point that by reading Mother and Aurobindo, I may sound a bit of, evangelist, but I'm not doing with this idea. I'm responding to a question. That if we read Mother and Aurobindo, we'll come in contact with their consciousness. And then the magic happens. I mean, as I was saying, for me, it happened like that. So I'm sure if we read them, it will create within us all that is necessary to reveal. Because divine is not far. We don't have to go. Actually, it is the most easiest of things, if you ask me. Only we have placed it very far. I don't know. कहीं कैलाश में बैठा दिया. अभी कहाँ जाएंगे? मान सरोवर ही जाना तो. Fortunately, now we have 3 routes. Thanks to the Honorable Prime Minister. But thing is ki, we have another skies, God knows which sky. 7 skies, 9. We have made him so far. But if we start with the ancient Indian conception that he is right near us, within us, and not only within me, but in everything. Anything can become an occasion to discover the divine. A stone, observing the rain, anything, if that seeking is there, we will see a response. Now, if we grow along those lines, we will arrive at the fullness. Fullness will not come immediately, because otherwise our instrument will collapse. As I said, it's okay to read about the sea, first step, then to walk to the sea. Thoda bahut putting feet in the water is fine, but if you go deeper, it's appalling. So he also slowly reveals himself step by step. So one has to be ready for, it's a lifelong search, or lives long search. Yeah. But you had a question or something? Okay, please.
You must be knowing that in a family most of the thoughts are not homogeneous. Some are thinking different way, and some are different view. So my first question is to pray Mother and Aurobindo, and how will concentrate when other partner, other people, they don't believe in that. Number 2, and what kind of preparation should do to get all the blessings? Or what I'm saying is, you can put Mother and Aurobindo in a different place, and some of them they do their family and their other people.
Okay, so I'll answer this question in 2 parts. Let's say if the partner does not believe the path that we are going, we are fortunate. I mean, Akla Chalo is such a joy in walking alone. I must say it. At least I feel if you have to walk alone, my best moments are when I am alone. Even with nature, I love it. So, and if your partner walks the same path, then you are double lucky. So let me put it. Because like in my case, you get such a support and together, so it's something very beautiful. Now, of course, in India, many times the partner is willy-nilly together because we are brought up in that whatever is the custom or tradition in which the husband is. So that's a different story altogether, and it's also carries sense. It carried sense from this very perspective, that so that there is no major dissonance in the core seeking. And so, of course, in Sanatana Dharma, we allow a lot of variety, including non-believing everything. So it works very well because it makes you very wide and complex. It's not a belief system. So it's okay. Now, if there is a differences of belief system, let's say with a child, so that's a situation more common. So, we can enrich each other. For example, if a child says, I don't believe in all this, talking about Mother and Aurobindo, instead of taking offense, if we understand that why he is saying so, and we tax ourselves to answer valid questions, if there are questions. If there are no question, a priori assumption, it's a different thing altogether. Then I would say you're just being unscientific and illogical. But supposing there is a genuine question, then to address that question, now we have probably not looked at it like that. But, there is somebody in the house who is looking at it like that. We can't invalidate it. So we can try to answer it to the best of our ability. So everything can become very fascinating for the self-discovery. But one thing we must remember, at the end it's an individual and the creation. So long back, many thoughts used to come. One of them was that, look, there are two complementary truths we must always remember in life. I tell my patients, also clients, one is that you are alone. Don't live in this illusion. So people just guesses. So I give this example. Now, for example, my wife had a head injury. She fell off the scooter. I was not there. Nobody was around. An auto rickshaw was passing, suddenly stopped. She was unconscious. So he took her and he doesn't know who is she. He could have taken her to general hospital and she would have gone. I would have completely lost her. I mean, I don't know. I have come for work. But I was feeling some ashanka inside. That's a different story. And then somebody says, hey, ashram. She's from ashram. Somebody recognized her and she was brought to the nursing home. There again, the ashram watchman is saying, no, we don't take any civilian. Go to GH. He's saying. And suddenly one lady who is coming out says, Arey re, Kavita, Alok da, aiye. To, so who helped her? I was not there. Somebody else. So if we remember that we are alone with God by our side. At the same time, the whole world is with us. See how unseen hands help us? On the road, on the way. I mean, parents often say, "Bachcho par depend karna." I always give them this advice, never do that kind of thing. Why we want to depend on children and make them also poor people, they will suffer with this idea that my parents, they want me around. Why? We should be capable, independent, and yet it may happen. I have seen people that the child has landed up all the way from South Africa or somewhere else just around the time that the parent is leaving. But equally, it may not happen. It's okay. So the whole world is one family, or we are walking this path alone. And because there are different stages of development, it's never good to disturb. There are people who are not ready for that utter blaze. So it's okay. One can't go to Himalayas, but it's okay. घर में एक हिमालय का picture लगा लिया तो बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है. Himalaya. Some people make it even more digital Himalaya version. It is soothing. But quite a different thing to walk the Himalaya. Now, can everybody who is watching this digital Himalaya actually undertake the journey? No. People are not equipped. So we have to understand that there is in India, that's why we respected the principle of graduality. That's why we had the 4 ashramas and the 4 purusharthas. So for each age, so you had the brahmacharya ashram, then the grahastha ashram, then the vanaprastha, and then the moksha sannyas, because it is very rare and a sign of big grace that one is open at a young age. Also, people will respond into different ways and forms and names of the divine. It's okay. Like, I turned to Mother and Aurobindo, or rather they pulled me more correctly by their grace. So it's wonderful for me. My parents forever worshipped Lord Rama. Their dedication to Rama was as much and maybe even more, who knows, than what I have for Mother and Aurobindo. But this is wonderful because Sanatan Dharma में ये है हमारे अंदर. But toward the end they turn towards Mother and Aurobindo. That's a different story. My sister, we both love each other very much. But she has this घर में सारे देवी देवता मम्मी पापा भी हैं and Mother Aurobindo, because so I often jokingly tell her, very fine, very loving, I tell her सब जगह टिकट बुक करा लिया है. कौन देवी देवता काम आ जाएगा पता नहीं. So he laughs. So we celebrate it because that's our journey. So it doesn't matter. I mean, let people do what they want to do. But for a seeker, then comes the third level of if we are seriously seeking, then comes this जाके प्रिय न राम वैदेही सो छाड़िए कोटि बैरी सम जद्यपि परम सनेही. That if you are seeking, that's what Meera asks to, I think it was Tulsidas, and that whom do I really, my in-laws are Shakts, my family member, they are Vaishnavites. For me, Krishna is everything. What should I do? They are saying either become a Shakt or thrown out of the house. So he says, now this is if the seeking has gone to that level. So he writes, Jake priya na Rama vedehi, So chhadiye koti varisam jaddapi param sanehi. And then he gives example. Bali guru tajo vibhishan bandhu bharat mahatari. So there are people who have left everything because they have loved and adored. Of course, ultimately you discover the one divine in everyone and everything. But there are steps and stages. So there comes a time when we want to only see the face of the one beloved everywhere in everything. And if there is anything which jars. And the fourth aspect of this question is parents and भगवान. तो उसमें तो बड़ा क्लियर है भाई, देखो सबको अपने जगह पर रहने दो. डोंट इट्स लाइक पति देवता. I say please spare him. Don't. Poor fellow will be crushed under the weight of expectation. I am supposed to act like a god. Well, he is not. So let's accept that the original parent who holds the royalty of her soul. That's the story of Kartikeya. Let the original remain the original. बाकी सब हैं अपने अपने जगह, उनकी अपनी जगह है, पेरेंट्स का स्थान अपना होता है. But when we start doing this, that my physical parents are also God, that's a bit too much. So people often quote this Sanskrit phrase. So I have my own twist to it. Acharya Devo Bhava, Pitra Devo Bhava, Matra Devo Bhava, Acharya Devo Bhava. So I said, it doesn't mean that Pita is Devata and Mata is Devata. And it is a command. Pita better be as a Devata. Mother better be as a Devi. No, then people will say, नहीं ठीक है, हम जैसे हैं वैसे हैं तो जिसको. So there should be a sense of measure. See, that is something which we have lost today. Two things. One is the adhikar bhed. So this problem of this kind of a liberal thought is that all is same, all is one, and we create a khichdi. So technically, if that is the case, we should not deny Kim Jong Yon or whatever that name is to give him all the nuclear technology. All are same. Will we do it? We won't do it because we understand that there are differences in manifestation and degrees. So parents are supposed to represent something of that inner reality, but hardly anyone can, because the divine as mother is a mother whose ways extremely loving, but she can even slap, but with ultimate love. Kali. Divine as father has infinite patience. The divine as teacher, he leads you along your way of evolution. So basically, original is that we are supposed to reproduce in our lives. If we can, wonderful, but we should know the difference. It's the same thing. Another example I give in this regard is, may sound little gross, but it's true, because once when I came to a talk in Seattle, so मेरे साथ एक American person था. So, he came and suitcase, opened the suitcase, took out a pair of shoes, kept on the bed. So, now, I have come from an Indian background, so jute ka apna jagah hai, you keep the shoe in its own place. You don't keep shoes over a book. It jars. And, okay, if this sounds very preposterous, then I say in a cupboard. So, how will you arrange if you have 4 layers? So, sabse upar, on top of the topmost shelf, will you keep shoes and keep, let's say, the picture of whatever represents to you as God in the lowest shelf, or clothes above? No, automatically within us. Even if you look at the human body, that's how things are. The highest is the brain, expanding towards the ultimate. Then things that we love, we keep them deep inside, in a chest, in a drawer. Then comes all food items and, and then comes physical things. So even human body gives us hints. So this putting a picture of parents and maa baap hi bhagwan hai, it's like saying, sorry to say, Hindu Muslim ek saman, sab Allah, sab Ram, or Hindi Chini bhai bhai. It's very nice, it's a euphemism, but we must know what is what, that's all. I'm not even trying to define. What is a knowledge which any rational thinking creature, forget about spiritually evolved. If a rationally thinking creature doesn't know what is what, and even in a chemical experiment you mix things together, they may create explosions. So let parents be in the place of parents, physical parents, which is fine. We can, if they have departed, we can, if we like, we can keep a picture somewhere by the side of the bed or somewhere in the drawer if you like. Best is to send them away, because don't keep them tied to you because they have on their own journey. But the picture of the divine we will keep maybe like this, and of course in the heart. Ultimately, if there is no picture, the original chubby is inside us. So this is how, and this I'm just saying just logically, nothing. Common sense and logic can save us from a lot of complications in life. People say this sometimes, sab ek barabar hai. Nowadays this is a new nara. So I tell them, okay, aisa karo, do this, that bring a cobra and start nurturing it in your house. Sab ek hai na? So why you want to limit it only to human beings? What is so special about human beings? Why not cobra? हमारे यहाँ कोबरा भी शिव जी के गले में रहता है. शिव के गले में कोबरा रह सकता है. If you bring to your house, you have lost that sense of measure. So in India, there was such a deep understanding of the rhythms, of the balance, the measure. That's how a harmonious structure could be built until, it was destroyed by a very barbaric kind of aggression, that was something which we had never anticipated. So we should be careful. We must learn how to keep each thing in its own place. Keep it in its own place, it's beautiful. But remove it out of its place, it becomes evil. And it applies even to human tendency. When sometimes there is something called as anger which is not good, but then when you get angry at something which is gross injustice and evil, it still is understandable. But if you get angry because your food has not been cooked properly or there is less salt, then you are really crossing a limit. So this is a measure we have lost in today's times. Adhikar bhed, the sense of balance, proportion, rhythm. That's why life has become so disorderly, chaotic and disharmonious. And I wish people recover it. It's very difficult. I was hearing what's happening in France was precisely the result of this. With Charles de Gaulle, who said, "Sab barabar hain." Algerians and French, let's mix and marry. I'm sure people know that history. Why? Because we'll make a common race. And today, the result is France is burning because we don't know. God has created a place for everything. Snakes live in the bill. That's their place. Nature has given them that place. If you start sheltering it in the home as a pet, people ask these questions. If you bring up a snake from the babyhood, when it grows up, will it understand that you love him and, if you puchkaro it, he'll kiss you, well, it'll be the kiss of death because that's how nature has created it. Okay. So that's how. So for a seeker of truth, it should be focused. But for a common, it's different. Yeah. Okay, I think you have...
Observe a moment of silence.
Yes, we can do that.